Welcome back. I'm Abrick, licensing consultant here at Felix Happich Consultancy. Today I'm tackling a subject that causes a lot of anxiety for experienced healthcare professionals: the gap of practice. In the medical world, your skills are considered perishable. The UAE regulators, DHA, DOH, and MOHAP, strictly follow the Unified Healthcare Professional Qualification Requirements, or PQR, which define a gap of practice as any period where you have not been engaged in active clinical practice for more than 2 years. I often talk to doctors and dentists who took time off for further studies, family reasons, or even administrative roles, thinking their active license back home is enough to keep them current. But here is the reality. If you haven't been seeing patients or performing clinical duties, the UAE considers that a gap. The PQR is very clear. Once you hit that 2-year mark, your path to a UAE license changes. You aren't just an applicant anymore. You become someone who needs to prove that they are still clinically competent. My goal today is to explain exactly how the regulators measure this gap and, more importantly, how I help my clients build a bridge back to full licensure using the specific CME and clinical training tracks required by law. So what happens when you cross that 2-year threshold? Specifically, I want to look at the 3-year break, as this is a critical bridge period under the PQR. If you've been out of clinical practice for more than 2 years but less than 5, you cannot simply apply and expect an immediate license. The PQR mandates a specific return to practice pathway. We often explain to our clients that this isn't just a punishment, it's a regulatory safeguard. Here is exactly what the bridge looks like for a 3-year gap. CME CPD requirements. You must provide evidence of completed continuing medical education or professional development credits. These must be relevant to your specialty and usually need to be earned within the last 12 to 24 months. The clinical training program. This is the most vital part. For a gap of this length, you are typically required to complete a period of clinical training. This isn't just shadowing. It's a structured program, often lasting between 3 to 6 months, conducted in an approved clinical setting. Assessment of competency. Depending on your specialty and the specific regulator, you may be required to undergo a practical assessment or retake a competency exam to prove your clinical skills haven't diminished. I see many practitioners try to gloss over these gaps on their CV. My advice? Don't. The data flow and PQR review process will find the gap. The successful strategy is to be proactive. At Felix Happich Consultancy, we work with you to identify these training requirements early, so you can begin your CME and clinical refreshers before you even submit your application. We want to show the regulators that you haven't just been away, you've been preparing to come back. Now we have to talk about the most serious threshold in the Unified Healthcare Professional Qualification Requirements, or PQR, the 5-year mark. If you've been away from clinical practice for more than 5 years, the UAE regulators view this as a complete loss of clinical continuity. At this stage, the bridge isn't just a training course or a few CME credits. For most specialties, once you hit that 5-year gap, you are considered ineligible for direct licensure. I often have to deliver this difficult news to practitioners who have been in management, pharmaceutical sales, or purely academic roles for over half a decade. Under the current PQR standards, if you haven't performed on a patient in 5 years, the regulator will typically require you to start your journey from the very beginning. This often means retaking the licensing exam. You will almost certainly have to sit down for the Prometric or DHA exam again, regardless of your past experience. Extended clinical internship. You may be treated as a new graduate or a re-entry candidate, requiring a full year of supervised clinical internship in a UAE-approved facility. Specialty re-evaluation. In some cases, your specialty status may not be recognized at the same level. For example, consultant to specialist, until you've proven your clinical hours once more. At Felix Happich Consultancy, my strategy for clients approaching this 5-year limit is urgency. If you're at the 4-year mark, we need to submit your application now. Once that clock strikes 5 years, the requirements become exponentially more difficult and expensive to meet. My job is to help you understand where you stand on this timeline so you can make an informed decision before the door closes. The biggest tragedy I see in licensing is the accidental gap. This happens when a practitioner has been working, but they can't prove it to the satisfaction of the UAE regulators. When you submit your application, the data flow group and the regulators aren't just looking at your CV. They're looking for verifiable clinical evidence. If your experience certificate is vague, for example, if it only says you're an employee without specifying clinical duties, it might be flagged as a gap. To protect your licensure, I advise all my clients to ensure their documentation meets these 3 PQR-aligned strategies. Clinical specificity. Your experience letter must explicitly state your job title and that you were engaged in full-time clinical practice. No gaps in dates. Ensure that there isn't even a 1-month black hole between leaving one job and starting another. If there is, I can help you prepare a formal justification letter. Authentic verification. Every document must be an official letterhead, signed by the medical director or HR, and include a contact email that Dataflow can actually reach. At Felix Happich Consultancy, we perform a pre-audit of your documents before they ever reach the regulator. We look for the same red flags that a reviewer looks for, ensuring that your years of hard work are recognized and that you aren't unfairly penalized for a simple paperwork error. A career break shouldn't be the end of your professional journey in the UAE. Whether you've been away for 2 years or 4, the PQR provides a pathway. You just need the right map to navigate it. The worst thing you can do is wait until you are at the 5-year mark to start your application. Proactive planning is the difference between a minor clinical refresher and being forced to start your career over from scratch. Our goal at Felix Happich Consultancy is to ensure that your transition back into the clinic is as seamless as possible by aligning your experience with the exact regulatory requirements of the DHA, DOH, or MOHAP. If you're currently in a gap or planning a career break and want to know exactly how it'll affect your future in the UAE, don't leave it to chance. Click the link in the description to book a 15-minute professional evaluation with us. We will personally review your timeline and help you build a bridge strategy that protects your license and your livelihood. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the technical side of UAE medical licensing. I'm Abrick, and I'll see you in the next video.